All right, Chris, here we are again, episode 19. We almost made it to the
Wow.
big 2-0.
Yeah. We'll get there very soon.
Yep. Yep. Episode
Next week.
19 of the High Octane Dads podcast. I hope we're going to have a guest on for episode 20. This week's a little different. We're honestly, we're kind of late recording tonight. What we normally do. We're both been pretty busy. Chris, I know you've got some fun news.
Yeah. I just left my job. But no, job I've been at for almost 18 years. And yesterday, the 16th, was my last day in the building. And as of the 18th will be my last day on paper. And so I guess today was my day of retirement is what I'm calling it. But no, I start my new job next Friday. I do my orientation. So I planned it where I had a few extra days off between. That way I could wrap up some stuff around the house that I want to try to knock out. And I've got to get basically a whole new wardrobe for my new job. So got to do a little
Suit
bit of
and tie?
shopping. Nah, polo khakis.
Fair
So
enough. Could be worse.
yeah. Oh yeah. So we'll see. I
I got a
mean,
closet full of ties that I used to have to wear, and now I
uh,
work in sweatpants most days, and it's pretty awesome.
all right. Tell you what, I've been in sweatpants all day today. It's been great. But
Love it.
no, and I'm kind of bougie on my pants and stuff now. So, um, my best friend from high school, he got married 5, 6 years ago, and I was in the wedding, and I had to get a pair of Duluth fire hose pants, and he was like, "Man, they're the greatest thing ever." Da da da, whatever. I'm like, dude, these are like $80 pair of pants. I mean, what are you trying to do? But I tell you, he was right, and I won't ever go back. So I have all Duluth stuff these days, or their sub brand, the 40 grit. I really like the 40 grit because it's about half the price and still really good quality. And they all have that little bit of spandex in them. So, if you got a little bit of chub here, you can still move around pretty good. So I've got quite a bit of their stuff. So my last job, I had a whole stack of different types of shorts that I wear to work. They were all 40 grit. They were different colors. So I plan to go and basically do the same thing with long pants.
Yeah.
And so that way they've still got the elastic in them. And they honestly, the ones that I had for what I was doing, most of them are like 3 or 4 years old. So, I mean, spend a little bit extra money up front, but they're a lot more comfortable and they've held up well. So I intend to do the same over here. Now the polos, I'll probably just kind of get whatever fits comfortably.
So Duluth, if you're listening and you want to be the official
Yeah,
uniform
I,
for the High Octane
I,
Dads podcast, reach out to
that
Chris.
would be great because I mean, I've got Duluth drawers on right now. That's all I wear. Now you got to get them with the bullpen. That way, everything is like got its own little home. Keeping the sweat away. It's good stuff.
Good deal. Some stuff is worth paying for, that's for sure. I'm that way generally
Absolutely.
about. I didn't used to be that way about shoes, and not like
I
from
didn't either.
a style perspective so much, but from I've found when you buy cheap shoes, you're buying them more often, or
Hmm.
they're just so uncomfortable to wear that it's like you can't ever break them in really. So
Nope.
that's been a learning
Sim-
experience, especially I mean like work boots, right? Like you're gonna spend for work
oh,
boots, but
yeah.
it's worth every penny.
Yeah. So that's another thing. I can get away from work boots every day. Um, I'll have to have some safety shoes, but I don't have to have anything where I wear every day. The ones I've had to be oil and slip resistant, and they would get soaked with oil, and they would stink, and they would get heavy, and they would get grease spots all over everything. So I was swapping shoes all the time. I had a tote I kept in my car that I kept my boots in, and I'd wear a pair of slip-on Vans to work, and I'd swap them in the parking lot. Some people use the lockers inside the building. Uh, I didn't because they moved mine to where it was in the back of the building. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Just change my shoes every day.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
safety
yeah,
shoes, they gonna make you use safety scissors or
they probably should. I mean, you know, they probably should, but No, I mean, yeah, I busted out a brand new pair of Vans that I've had in the closet for years. So that's gonna be my new work shoe for right now. And
I picked up a
but
pair of Vans this weekend. We were at,
yeah,
so Dick's Sporting Goods has got like an outlet store. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like Dick's, the actual store, you'll never see like clearance stuff
yeah,
in the actual store, apparently. And we don't shop there very much, and most everything in there is so incredibly expensive. But then they've got,
mhm,
it's like their warehouse outlet thing. And we went in, and so the Vans were regular like $65, and then they were marked down, or they were marked down to 65, but then it had a thing on it. It's like certain days, almost like Goodwill, right? Certain colors will be different percentages off, and it was like another 30% off. I ended up paying like $30 for them, and they're the memory foam sole ones. So,
okay.
um, yeah, I mean, that's Vans and Adidas are I definitely
Well,
got a few pair of each.
so in 2019, I had a back surgery for L4, L5, L5S1, and since then, my wife bitches at me because I have so many pairs of shoes
Mm.
because I rotate them a lot more now. Like you said, I buy a little bit better shoes. Um, I don't have all the feeling in my feet on the sides of my feet anymore. So I do like the Vans and like Converses because it kind of gives me a little more grounded feeling.
Mm.
But they don't always have the best support. So I do have like plantar fasciitis insoles that I keep in them, and that helps. But I do have a pair of shoes. So my physical therapist last year wanted me to go get a different pair of tennis shoes, and I can't remember the brand that he wanted me to get first. But where we had to go to, I ended up stopping at a nice shoe store, and I ended up buying a pair of Ultras. It's like ALTRA, and the ones that I got, I wasn't wild about like the color scheme on them, but they have a super wide toe box on them. And I tell you what, that's one thing I found that the only thing with like Vans and stuff like that is my feet are a little wide for them. But
Hmm.
those
Me
shoes
too.
have this stupid wide toe box. And I'm like, oh my God, this feels amazing. And if you'd ask my wife, it's probably why my toes look so up these days. She says I have ugly toes. And it's probably from over the years wearing shoes that were too narrow, crunching my toes in. So I'm
That's
sure it
why we're
creates
doing
all
a
sorts of.
podcast. You couldn't sell your feet pics.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's probably some really nice individuals out there that would, like my disgusting looking toes. But I
Uh,
mean,
so I promise
hey,
we're
if
gonna
you
get the
want to,
car
you want to
stuff here
buy
in
them,
just a second.
let us
Yeah,
know.
there you go. Yeah, just reach out. We got plenty of feet to go around. But yeah, we're gonna get to some car stuff here in a second. I got some project updates. One thing I do want to mention, if you're running a podcast, thinking about running a podcast, or doing any type of recording, video, whatever, um, we've been using the Riverside FM app. I mentioned it last week. They're affiliated with Spotify, but I got a message from them today. I've tried to be pretty active in their Discord. Once I went to kind of the paid version of it, and helping people out, answering questions and stuff like that. And I'm probably going to do some videos on how to do things within the app. But I did get approached that, if anybody's interested in doing Riverside FM or, setting up Riverside FM, to an offer to be an affiliate with them. So reach out to me. But even if you don't, in that respect, I enjoy answering questions about it. So anybody who's trying to get it set up, happy to help with that. But
Yeah.
moving on from that, before we get into your adventure from earlier in the
Last
week,
weekend.
or was it last weekend?
Yeah.
So as you guys can see, I got the race stars back on the car. I'm really pushing to get to the track tomorrow night, but I've got some things tomorrow that have kept me pretty busy, or things coming tomorrow that I've been preparing for that kind of took my focus away from the car. But we did spend last Saturday. John came over with Angry Elf Performance, and we knocked out getting this thing lowered in no time. The stance is so much better now. It looks a ton better. Couldn't be happier. And did some, Steve was on me about moving my lower control arms down to the lower hole on
Mm-hmm.
the relocation brackets. So went ahead and knocked that out while I had the wheels off today. So really hoping to get the car on the trailer, which may be a challenge with it lowered now, and then get to the track and make some passes tomorrow night. My son's excited about going, and hanging out. So looking forward to doing that. I have not made any tune adjustments as of yet. I've still got to turn the knock sensors off, and then I'm sure there's some changes with, the additional air from the new throttle body and intake but I think just driving it and logging it's going to be the best way to do that, and where better to data log it than on the track. So
exactly.
We'll
Cool.
find out. So I may have the plan tonight is to do some recording, and then I'll have some video from the track, whether I end up making passes or not. I know John is going, so the Toyota mini truck will be out there. There's a lot of people from Central Georgia that are coming out to just do test and tune and hang out and race. There's a few folks who've, lined up a few races to see who's the fastest. So I'll be out there and shooting some video and get that kind of spliced into this. That'll be a lot of fun too. Or may do it as a separate video. I don't know yet. Depends on how much we get tonight. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to actually get this thing out. I don't think I was looking back. I thought I went racing last year, but I think it was November of 22 is when I went and made passes the last time. I've driven it since then, but I think that's the last time I went to the track.
It's a lot better than me. So, yeah, this one back here, the last time we went to the track was November of 2014. So,
okay.
It's been a while. Obviously, it's been driven since then. Not a ton, but
yeah.
That's another thing we'll have to get into one day about. When I was younger and, see people with cars, and I'm like, man, how can they let that stuff sit all the time? Man.
And then here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to a good friend of mine from high school last weekend, and he's got a 69 Mach 1 that he bought when we were between our 8th grade and freshman year in high school, and him and his dad went through it. And it's not like a super in-depth like restore, but it's like a driver quality car. And I mean, he drove the wheels off that car. He beat the hell out of it when we were in high school. And it had a Cleveland that swapped in it with a 4-speed and all that. And then later he blew it up, and then they put a stroke motor in it. And I ran into him last weekend. I'm like, hey man, have you taken the Mustang out this year at all? He's like, I haven't moved it in a couple years. So, but he's got into other things that he got into pulling trucks there for a long time, was building a tractor, and said now he's working on that again. So that'll be something we can maybe touch base with in the future too.
Yeah, it's all I can do right now not to go down talking about that rabbit hole and how you end up and don't realize how long it's been since you've like driven your projects and stuff, and life get in the way. But we got to save that one because we'll talk for
that'll be a long
time on that. So speaking of shoes, because sometimes you need them when your cars break down on the side of the road. Tell me a little bit about what happened this past weekend.
Yeah, so last weekend was homecoming weekend for my daughter's high school. So she was going to go to homecoming. It was her and a friend of hers. Well, all of us were going to go out to dinner. So we went to a town over, and we all went out to eat. And we were in my wife's Hyundai. So it's a 2014 Hyundai Santa Fe. And so there's 6 of us. We're a family of 6. So all 6 of us were in it, and we met up with the friend at the restaurant and their parents, and we went in and had dinner, and we were leaving, and we were taking her back to take her to homecoming. We were on the interstate. My wife was driving. She's like, oh God, the battery light's on. And I'm like, all right, well, does it drive any different? She's like, well, no. I'm like, all right, it might not be charging. And we were just passing an exit. And I'm like, well, it'll be all right to get off at the next exit. No, I didn't take into account that these newer cars that have so much electronics in them.
A lot more. Yeah.
And it was like just after sunset, and we're riding down the interstate, and she's driving, and she's like, it won't let me do anything. I'm pushing the gas. The car's running, but it's not doing anything. And then like the headlights are turning on and off, and it basically was just running enough to keep it, on the road. And it's electric power steering. So she lost power steering.
Oh yeah.
And so she's freaking out. So I'm like, just get over. And we were pulling up, and there was like an opening where there wasn't a guardrail, and she just kept rolling. I was like, stop. She's like, I'm stopping. I was like, before the guardrail. So that way, we could pull off farther off the side of the
Further.
road. And we finally got it stopped. As soon as it happened and the way it happened, I was like, it's got to be that alternator went out of it. And, the car's a 2014. I think she's got like 145,000 miles on it. And it's, knock on wood, it's been a great car. So we're at a point, in its life where we're starting to do a lot of routine maintenance. But yeah, we broke down, and I don't have my own car trailer because I don't have room for one. But in everybody that I knew that had one were busy or, didn't, were out of town
Mm-hmm.
or didn't have a winch, which I was able to hook up a jump box to it and get it to where I could move it around. But my sister ended up coming out and picked up everybody in the Suburban and then went ahead and took them home, which my daughter's friend ended up coming. Her and her parents came and picked her up on the side of the interstate and took her the rest of the way to homecoming because we were going to be late if she waited
Mm-hmm.
around with us. So my sister picked everybody else up. I stayed with the car. My dad showed up, hung out with me, him and his girlfriend. He brought me my jump box. So like I said, I was able to jump it and back it off the road a little bit farther. And then my good friend David, he came out there with a charged battery. We swapped the battery in, and I was able to get it to the next exit. But like I came down the hill, like as soon as I got the car going, I'm like, I'm going this if I got an opening. And I took off, and I got like half mile up the road, and the headlights shut off, and everything on the dash
Mm-hmm.
shut off. And I'm like, oh God. And then they pop back on, and then I'm like, the exit's right here, but
Yeah.
it's a junction from one interstate to another. So I hopped on the other interstate, and like I had no throttle response at all from getting
Mm.
off of one interstate. And then I got off on the other one. It was like, I don't know, a quarter mile, half mile. And I just coasted like 20 mile an hour down the interstate, and then got off and coasted down. As soon as I got off of it, I pulled off in the grass, opened the hood, hooked up my jumper box, turned it on, shut the hood, and then drove it down the road to a gas station and parked it.
Yeah.
And I had called the insurance, and it took them. So we have towing on our insurance, and the process was more my issue because I didn't really give a great review, but I didn't give a necessarily negative review when they asked me. And it wasn't anything with the tow company. It was just the process trying to punch it all in.
Right.
And like at first they were wanting to send somebody else to jump it. And the company called me and they were like, as soon as we read the report, we're pretty sure your alternator died and jumping it's not going to help you. I was like, no, that's what happened. I just need a tow. And so they had to call somebody else. And then it took them like an hour and a half to show up. Like this happened like 7:15. I got home at like 9:15. The car didn't get home till like 11 o'clock. So,
Yeah.
but
And
it's all it was an alternator.
my wife used to work emergency roadside service for one of the big insurance companies, and that was always that was what she did. Right, was the person
Okay.
coordinating the tows and things like that, and they had certain rules for like, okay, how far is the car off the road, and how far are you from, how far can it be towed, and all these different things. And she's told me about it before, but I think that the goal of these companies, if they're customer focused, right, is to make that process as simple as possible. And the
Right.
downside is, depending on, especially when you go with like a cheaper insurance, and I mean, as much as I do, sometimes you got to shop by price because insurance is crazy, and you don't know when you get some of these discount ones, like you're not going to need that tow service very often. Hopefully you don't ever need it again. It's a good thing you have it, but like, you don't know how smooth it's going to go till you end up
Yeah.
using it. So,
Oh, yeah.
and then I know
And
some people who are just like too proud to even have any type of road. Like they're like, I don't need roadside service. I don't need this. And I'm going, I get that for, for my stuff, but I want
mhm,
it for my wife and my kids, that if they're stuck
yeah,
out somewhere, they can call somebody, especially say I'm out of town for work or something like that.
right.
And I can't get to them.
Well, and I'm definitely glad we had it because, like I said, it was a process just for me getting it off the interstate like we did. And like any of my stuff, I could have thrown the battery in it, probably drove the rest of the way home, and it would have
Mm-hmm.
made it there, but barely. Then, like I said, this thing, I put the battery in it and made it half mile down the road, and it was draining that one already just because of the amount of electronics in that car.
Mm-hmm.
And I've driven a lot of garbage over the years, and I've had to limp home stuff like that a lot in different scenarios. And so I kind of knew like to get the most out of it as far as like coasting and getting off the road. So that's, like I said, my wife was pretty nervous when it happened. And she's like, I don't like how my car did that when the battery died. Like everything just turned off. And I was like, it's nothing with the car. It's going to happen with any modern car.
We can go find her a third
Yeah.
gen, and then she wouldn't
Yeah.
have that much of a problem. It's funny you say it because like when I first got the swap done in this thing, so the 4L60E that I got initially, it's a fun story because I found it on like the Jacksonville, Florida Craigslist, and it was like a 6 hour drive. And me and the wife were talking about it. I was like, but it was like $200 for this 4L60.
Right.
And I was like, well, we could go get it. And then that turned into me calling my best friend and saying, hey, y'all want to go to Daytona tomorrow? And we'll spend the night and get up and we'll pit her around Daytona and then we'll come home, cannonball run style, or more or less. We'll stay one night and we'll come back. And, um, he's a lot like me. Spontaneous trips aren't something we do very often. But he was like, yeah, let's do it. And we still talk about how much fun we had just riding down and hanging out. And,
Mm-hmm.
we stayed in a hotel that night. We went around like downtown Daytona, checked some stuff out. I think we ate at like Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. And then because we're tourists, and
Yeah.
we, we went and picked this thing up. Well, this guy lived in some apartments and we roll in and he's got his own little garage space and he can rent garages and stuff at some of the apartment complexes. And I go over there to get the transmission and he's got a 4th gen in there. And he's like, yeah, I'm military and I'm transferred. So I'm trying to unload as much out of the garage as I can, just so that all I'm moving is the car and a few of my parts. And I was inexperienced enough at the time to not look around and go, is there anything else I can pick up out of here? I was
Yeah.
there for the transmission. But then he's like, yeah, it came out of this car. He said, I changed it out, upgraded to a 4L80E. And at the time, again, my inexperience, it didn't dawn on me to go, he pulled this thing out of a twin turbo 4th gen. That transmission is probably not healthy. But I mean, for $200, it was cheaper than a core for the most part. So it still worked out, but I was driving it. I had driven it all around town, seemed to do fine. And then one night I finally got brave and I was like, all right, me and the wife are going to go out on a date. I had to run her mom home. She'd been over with us doing some stuff around the house or hanging out with the kids. And so I was going to run her home, which was a good little drive, took her home. And then we went to a Mexican restaurant. We had dinner. It was great. When we left, I decided when I got on the interstate, I was like, all right, I'm going to get on it. It's really my first time
Mm-hmm.
since I got the car back together. I'm going to really get on it coming on the interstate. And I did. And it pulled strong and it rev and it, shifted up, and then nothing. And it just kept revving and it just kept revving. And then I let off of it and it downshifted and then it wouldn't shift back up. And I was like,
Oh,
oh boy. And
yeah.
so I pulled off to a gas station and you could just smell burnt ATF. It was hot. And so, it's got the manual valve body in it, right? So I can at least 1 and 2. So I literally was like, it's already screwed up anyway. So I drove home at 30 mile an hour in second gear. I would pull it down to first to start off and I would bump into second and I would just get it to about 4,000 RPM. It was really loud. And we made it the 18 miles or so home, kind of limping it that way. But, she's a good sport because when we were first dating, back when it had the 305 in it, we decided to go up to Summit in it and we made it 3/4 of the way there, had the T-tops out and the bottom fell out. I just,
Uh,
wasn't, I didn't think it was supposed to rain that day or whatever. And so we're like on the side of the road getting soaked, putting the T-tops back in. And she still tells that story and how much fun she had. So that's when I knew she was a keeper.
cool. That's good.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So that was one of the questions I had though around that is, I've got 2 new drivers and, I've had a situation where, I was driving, my son was in the car and it's like, if you panic, you're liable to do more harm than good, right? You have to just stay calm, work the problem, figure out how to get off the road safely or, whatever you have to do in that situation and kind of think about what all is going on, what could be causing that issue. But a non-car person isn't going to be doing that. But how do you approach, like you've got a new driver and kind of preparing them for those kind of scenarios and just teaching them not to panic?
I don't know because I panic anytime I get in the car with my daughter. So no,
I do
um,
too, but you can't let them smell fear, Chris.
no, no. Uh, honestly, I mean, you gotta kind of get them in situations that's going to make them uncomfortable, I guess. I mean, I will say that when I was a kid, I had a go-kart that I ran around a lot. A lot. My grandparents had, a little bit of land, and I'd go stay the summer with them, and I'd run that thing all over. So I kind of got the feel of, you know, driving something with four wheels and a steering wheel. Given it wasn't necessarily, the rules of the road, but you kind of knew how to like stay in your lane, how
Oh,
to
and how
pay
to gauge
attention when you're
throttle
driving.
response, braking.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that's something I can definitely tell is different with my daughter because she's never been an outdoorsy person, never really been into doing a lot of different stuff. Like if she was a lot older when she started riding a bike, she just really wasn't into it. So I definitely think that, the whole lot of like a hand-eye coordination, stuff from getting out there and doing things will definitely help. Because I can see a difference in my boys, and they want to be outside all the time. We've got these little electric cars for them, and my 4-year-old's pretty good on zipping that thing around the yard and weaving in and out of stuff. And I mean, given it, I might say different in 12 years when he started to drive, but there's a lot of stuff that we'll have to be driving. I'm like, hey, you got to pay attention. You got to stay. Like she likes to hug the middle of the road. I'm like, look,
Hmm.
I would rather you run off the road and take out a mailbox than hit somebody head on.
Yeah.
And
My son's the
I'm sure,
opposite. He's on the line over there because
yeah,
he's worried about, another car coming along. He feels like he's close, but I'm like, you're on that side. So
yeah,
you're a better gauge of how close you are to that line. But you've also got to, understand that you can't go off the road over here. You just got
right.
to kind of split the difference there. And I mean, he's the same way. Like they didn't have go-karts and stuff growing up. And I
Hmm.
did. I remember riding a go-kart and it's funny you talk about not panicking. There was a time when I don't remember if the throttle stuck or what the deal was, but it was obviously something Dad knew might happen because the go-kart maybe wasn't in the best shape because he had wired up a kill switch, but it was like on the back, like by the mud. It wasn't up front where you could just easily get to it. And I remember going across the yard and all of a sudden I'm like, it's not stopping. It's just going to keep going. And so I'm like trying to reach back and find the kill switch. And I had not really spent that time to have kind of the muscle memory of exactly where it was at. And I just kind of put it into the chain link fence. So it was sitting there just up against the fence. And then I was able to
Yeah.
reach back and find it. But, yeah, I mean, I think too, like maybe I've heard that it's an ADHD thing that once you're sort of in a crisis or you tend or chaos is kind of around you, you tend to get calmer and think clearer.
Yeah.
It's something to do with the dopamine releases of, okay, I meant the adrenaline and everything. And I've found that in a lot of cases, like there was one day I was in my I had an HHR 2007 HHR I bought as a company car, and it was a cool little car, a little 4-cylinder. I literally drove it to 250,000 miles before I sold it. And as far as I know, it's still putting around town somewhere. Little thing
Cool.
was great. The only thing I ever had to do to it, this was the first car I had that had electric power steering in it. I didn't really even know that was a thing. And the power steering would work when you first crank the car up for about 45 seconds. So I literally knew, okay, if I'm backing out of a parking space, crank the car up and go ahead and get backed out. And then once I was moving, you're good. And, I ended up replacing the power steering motor. It wasn't bad, but anyway, I was driving down the road and there was a Tahoe in front of me, and the Tahoe at the last second swerved to miss something. And I was close enough running at 75 that there was no adjusting for me, and my car was lower than that Tahoe anyway.
Mhm.
There was a U joint off of a big rig. I mean, this thing was huge, and I hit it with both right wheels and instantly flattened them. I mean, they just because it bent both of the wheels. I mean, just
Right.
gone. And I was the third lane over from the emergency lane. And I remember all of it like in slow mo of, okay, I'm going to hit these or I'm going to hit this thing. So I kind of braced and then I'm already looking in my mirrors going, okay, do I have a clear shot all the way to the side of the road? And I just remember like, it was a non-event of like, bloop, bloop, and then boom, I'm going off to the side of the road and looking back, I'm like, man, I could have really freaked out in that moment and not knowing jerk the wheel or, a lot of different things could have happened. And my only thought at that point was, what if somebody hits it and doesn't react, relatively calmly and gets off the road? So my smart self said, I'm going to get it out of the middle of the interstate, this 4-lane section where 2 interstates came together. But it was in like the middle lane. I was like, well, can't reach that. And about that time, another semi hit it and knocked it over into the slow lane. And I was like, all right, God, okay, you want me to get it? I'll go get it out of the road. So I went to grab it, and I grabbed it with my left hand. And I remember as my right hand almost reached it, I saw the smoke coming off of it. But my brain was like, too late. And I grabbed it and like just chucked it toward the side of the road. Because the one end where the yoke was cool, but the other end it had probably been dragging on the ground.
Right.
It burnt my hand. Like I had to go to like med-say. It burnt my hand pretty good, but I did get it out of the road. It was a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, that thing was probably pretty hefty.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I chucked it, really hard, and then what didn't help was the yoke side of it. When I first tried to grab it, my hand slipped off because all the grease. And luckily, at least the grease wasn't high, because I'd have never got that off my hand.
Right.
I immediately went to the side of the road. The grass was still like wet with dew, and I'm just like getting cold, as much as I can on it. And I had to call the office because it was a company car at the time when it happened, and I was like, guys, I don't think I'm going to make that service call in Atlanta today, and I need somebody to come get me. And they're like, you don't know how to change a tire? I'm like, well, it's 2 of them. They're both flat. So I'm going to need somebody to come get it. But yeah, I mean, and they took care of me, and they sent somebody to get me. But I remember and I've had other moments like that where it's like in that moment, you suddenly just, what do I got to do? And everything happens sort of in an instant. And I think, but that's not something you can teach. I try to tell my 16-year-old when he's driving, he's like, what do I do if this happens? Well, how much do I need to slow down at this intersection? I'm like, bud, he's a good driver because he's super careful, and my daughter, she's a really good driver. They both surprised me, and they've done really well, especially having not driven go-karts and stuff as kids. But he's my really careful one. So he's a good driver, but he's trying to think ahead. All right, I got to go.
He's overanalyzing everything. There?
And he wants me to like help him understand what to do and I said, I have to teach you how to have good judgment and know kind of your, what's going on, what's up with the car, and make good decisions, because I can't possibly prepare you for everything you're going to run into.
No. And I mean, and that's the sad thing, is you're just going to have to experience things to really, that's where I do think that, having like those electric Power Wheels cars, go-karts, and, outside riding toys that you can actually, drive around on and learn a little bit when you're young, definitely will help when you get a little bit older. And I know not everybody has that, luxury, but I mean, I definitely think it helps.
Yep. I mean, we got a golf cart that we inherited, and they drive that thing around, but that thing's literally, you're either all the way to the floor driving it around the yard, and it's still not even really going that fast, or, so it doesn't really teach you kind of giving it a certain amount of gas, slowing down, coming into a turn, because that thing you can pretty much just stay in it and drive all around the yard. But I mean, and I think we are going to get a go-kart, especially for my youngest, just because we've got the 2 acres. Like, we didn't used to have a place to ride one, and now we do. And I definitely want him to get comfortable.
Watch out for the pole.
It's inside the fenced area, so they can't get to that, thankfully. I do have to, I remember one time riding my go-kart in our yard, and we had a trampoline, and without one of the ones that's got the ours were just it was literally just a platform with an engine on it and 4 wheels, right? There was no like roll. We ever had one of the roll cage ones where you were kind of enclosed, and, driving toward that thing, it was always, if the throttle stuck or something, like, you don't want to go under the trampoline. That would suck. And
my 4-year-old did that the other week on his little Power Wheels thing, and I think he thought it was higher than it was. And I was in the yard, and all of a sudden he started yelling for me, and I turned around and looked, and he was up underneath of it, trampoline like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm stuck. And I'm like, just keep your head like that and give it gas. And he's like, I can't do it. So I had to go over and lift the trampoline up. He was already halfway underneath of it. And so I had to lift the trampoline up and let him drive out of it. And I was like, don't do that again. And he bonked his head on it. Uh-oh.
I have no idea what that was. Some tools fell, but I don't know what tools would have fallen over there. So that's interesting. Anyway,
It's the
look,
ghost of 60 East Past.
look, if something gets me, I ain't got to go to work tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, well, you're
So,
already at work.
yeah, exactly.
You're at the office.
Exactly. I am. That
Uh,
is one thing I love, man. No matter what job, like I've told people before, if you want me to come back into an office on the regular, like you're going to have to back a dump truck full of money up for me to,
yeah.
because my skill set and what I do, I can work remotely. Like I honestly, I will say going into an office is refreshing from time to time when you work from home all the time, or at least finding an alternative location
Mm-hmm.
and kind of getting out of your space. Because when you have like a difficult day, especially if you have a really hard day and you work from home, I could talk about this for a long time, right? If you work from home, and me, like my desk is in my bedroom now. So like
Yeah.
you have a really bad day or, a bunch of stuff's popping off at work and now you're going to try to walk 4 feet and go to bed and relax for the evening.
Yeah.
That just that,
Yeah.
that energy or whatever it is just like, there's no disconnection from it. And, so I definitely think that, getting into an office every now and again, especially if you've got to do something that's kind of a pain is nice to have one to go to. And all the jobs I've had recently, even my last job, the office was 2 hours away up in Atlanta, and I would go once a quarter and have a meeting with my team, but not, not anything on the regular versus if it was a local company and I could go like a day a week, I probably would, but I'm definitely
Yeah.
not ever interested in going back to 40 hours a week in an office unless the compensation was significant.
Cool. Yeah, I could see that.
But, I think we said we were going to make this one kind of short, Chris, and we're at
Yeah.
37 minutes. So we're really there. Any last thoughts?
No, I'm pretty stumped right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a busy weekend doing, celebrating an anniversary and trying to do that and catch up around the house the next week before I start my new job. So I am going to do a few things to the garage, to the house to try to help streamline so that way I can work on some things, but it's never enough time or enough help. So,
Yep. I think, that's definitely a topic for next week. Depending on
oh
if we
yeah,
have a guest or whatever, but I spent the weekend, all the stuff that we had brought into the garage through, the storms and everything else, storage, got some of my wife's stuff out of the attic and made some room, put some other things up there. Like I'm almost happy with where the garage is at. I've got a place for everything. I've still got the tire and wheel rack to put up on the wall. But I got all these shelves over here organized, all my cleaning supplies, and I took everything off, cleaned it, and put everything back. My workbench is pretty much cleared off here. The one I'm sitting at, I got a little work to do, but that shelf up there got completely cleaned, wiped down, and got things put up there. So that organization this weekend was good for the soul for sure, and
oh
just
yeah,
kind of getting me right, because I would have never been able to get out here and even take those spacers back off and swap these wheels if I'd have been tripping over everything. It took me twice as
yeah,
long. So
yeah,
we could
yeah.
definitely talk about that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna work on this week, trying to finish my sanding and maybe even priming this room. It'd be nice to go ahead and paint it. I've got a little bit of trim work to do in my basement bathroom. Maybe try to knock that out. Just depends. I don't
Yep.
know. So much to do, so little time.
For sure. For sure. Same here. This weekend, we, obviously maybe going to the track tomorrow, but then Saturday, pretty excited. I've been waiting for this concert. I'm not a big concert guy generally. But they built an amphitheater, like 15, 20 miles from us. And it, wasn't really sure I was going to do because of the proximity to Atlanta. You got to think a bigger act would probably go to the more populated place, but we've had some decent acts come through there. But this week, Brantley Gilbert's actually wrapping up his tour here. I don't know how many folks that listen to us know Brantley Gilbert, but if you do, tell me in the comments, because love Brantley Gilbert. But even cooler in my mind is that Demon Jones is going to be playing there, and he lives here in our county, here in Jones County where we're from. He was graduated here, super nice guy, works out of the gym that I do. So excited to see him in concert as well. And I think I think him and Adam Calhoun are going to be there. So it's going to be a good show. And like I said, I'm usually not a big concert guy, but going to that one. And then I've got tickets in June for Metallica at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Oh,
And that
that'd be
is going to
awesome.
be sweet too.
That would be awesome.
But well, cool. I think we'll wrap it up there and we'll pick up next week. Guys, please, in the comments in the group, give us your feedback. Tell us what things you want to hear. What do you want to see? What's something you want to know about that we can tell you guys about? Because I promise if I don't know, I can research it and find out and bring it back to you.
We love learning new things too.
Yep. I have spent the last 2 days learning lean management fundamentals and going through Amazon AWS training because I just got that wild hair for self-improvement again. And now I'm doing courses on Coursera and reading books again. It's been good to be back into that because I feel like I've definitely I've taken a long hiatus from learning new things for my career. So
right.
But yeah, let us know, guys. I'd love to go research something for you and bring it back to you. But for tonight, I think we'll wrap it up and see you guys in the next one.
Yep. See you later.
All right. Have a good evening, folks.